Good Thursday afternoon to you. 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Browns will get training camp underway less than a month. They released this hype video with Deshaun Watson getting ready for training camp.
The goal is to try to get to that Super Bowl. I want to continue to have those standards very, very high, and everyone got to hold me to that standard also.
Here's Watson looking for the edge. Watson is going to stroll in for the Cleveland touchdown. Lots of room in front of him.
Chubb stays in, opening up Watson to find Amari Cooper for the touchdown. A huge Cleveland score late in this game. Play action fake, throws it out, caught. He dives for the pylon. Touchdown!
Came back last year and played 6 games, full off season, full time with the Browns. He's probably going to be really good.
Let's welcome in Quincy Carrier, Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage. Quincy, I know you've answered this question on your show. Is it Super Bowl or bust for Deshaun Watson?
Yeah, there's a sentiment out there that says Deshaun Watson, and this goes back to the money. Oh, because he has all this money, the goals have to be that he wins the Super Bowl. And I always find that take kind of hilarious because it's like he's getting paid $230 million over 5 seasons. Not for just the one season. If they were paying him $230 million for just this one season, yeah, you got to win the Super Bowl with that. But the fact that it's spread out over 5 years tells me that, yeah, they probably want to win the Super Bowl within these 5 years. But it don't got to be this year. So, no, I don't think it's Super Bowl or bust for Deshaun Watson. The expectations are high, though, right? Like, when you look at the Browns roster, when you look at this team, you know, Deshaun Watson's going to make or break what they're able to achieve and what they aren't. So that's really what they have hanging in the balance, and what Deshaun has hanging in the balance. It's not necessarily Super Bowl or bust. You kind of got to get to, like, a conference championship game to be talking about Super Bowl or bust beforehand. But the expectations are certainly high.
I would agree. So I guess the next logical question is, how do you measure success? Does he have to throw for 5,000 yards and 45 touchdowns? How do you measure success for Deshaun Watson then?
Yeah, one of the things I've noticed, like, I don't think you want him going for 5,000 yards because that tells you more is going wrong with the offense and that you're having to rely on him. Outside of Patrick Mahomes, if you look at the other 5,000-yard passers, they get to that number because of necessity, because they're having a real hard time getting efficiency out the run game, and they don't have a run game that they believe in enough to run it a decent amount of time. That's not going to be what the Cleveland Browns situation is. And when you look at measuring success for Watson, you have to ask the question, hey, is the roster good enough around him that it's fair to judge him off of his record? I think the Browns spent the entire offseason trying to make the answer to that yes, right? When he was in Houston in 2020 and that team stunk and he went 4-12, nobody judged him based on the record because that team was obviously not good enough to be able to get to that point with him. This year, this team is good enough that the record is going to be a reasonable measure of success for him because it's not like Houston, right? You have all the pieces you need on defense. You have all the pieces you need offensively, or at least the pieces you need. You don't have everything you want, but you have everything you need there to have a successful passing attack. So if you're Deshaun Watson, that's really what's going to measure success. How far do you go? How far do you reach in the regular season? What do you achieve? And those things will determine how we look at this in total.
Yeah, here's what I've said when we discuss this. You want Deshaun Watson to be a guy that when he has the ball with 3 minutes left in the game, defenses are going, oh, no, how are we going to stop this guy? Kind of the way, you know, the Browns are with Mahomes or Jackson or Burrow. Late in the game, you want Deshaun Watson to put the pressure on the defense to find a way to keep him out of the end zone.
You know how other teams feel when we take a lead with like 2 minutes left and we're up by like 6? And we feel queasy because we got to get the ball up and there's 2 minutes left and we're not so sure that we're going to hold it. I want to feel what that feels like from the other side. You know what I mean? Like, what does it feel like in the NFL to be like, oh, we got the ball with 2 minutes left. They only up by 3. Oh, we got this. Like, that's what you want to feel with Deshaun Watson. You want to be able to feel like those moments are not beyond him. If you get in a 3rd and 17, you want to feel like, hey, Deshaun can make a play. I better not go to the bathroom, miss something. He can make a play, get this first down. We keep this drive going. You never want to feel like you're out of a game, and when you have a quarterback, you don't feel like you're out of the game, right? And you know this from the reverse side of it. No matter how much we're up on the Bengals, do we ever really feel like the game is over? Or the playoff game against Ben Roethlisberger, we were up by like 35 points in the first quarter, and none of us, not a single one of us watching this show, thought that game was over in the first quarter. Why? Because Ben's there, right? And we've seen that happen.
All right. This is from Pro Football Network, QB Power Rankings. They go Mahomes 1, Joe Burrow 2, Josh Allen 3, Lamar Jackson is 7, Jacoby Brissett is 20, Kenny Pickett is 21, Desmond Ridder is 25, Deshaun Watson 26, ahead of Stafford, Wilson, and Baker Mayfield. I'm not sure how they came up with these rankings. Dartboard method, Wheel of Fortune. But the problem with a ranking like this is eventually you lose credibility when you have ridiculous rankings like this.
And obviously, right, they put Deshaun Watson 26. That's ridiculous, right? But Jimmy Garoppolo at 15 is the most egregious thing you could put. They put him above Brock Purdy. The team was better when Jimmy got hurt. What are they doing? What are we doing here, man? What are we doing, dog? How do you justify that ranking? How do you, I'm not even talking about the Browns guys at this point. This is just an egregious conversation of football to put this list out here. You put Jimmy Garoppolo at 15 and then got the nerve to slap Daniel Jones up there at 13, telling me there ain't 13 more quarterbacks that you would rather have than Daniel Jones? Come on. Who made this list? I need to ask some questions because, okay, you want to put Deshaun Watson at 26? That's been the hot thing all summer, is to judge him exclusively off of those 6 games and act as if everything else that he achieved in the NFL just never happened. Fine. That's what everybody else is doing. But Jimmy Garoppolo at 15. Now, see, look, they can't just let everybody get microphones, Dave. We got to get regulations on these things and lists. And we can't just let people put out graphics no more because harm is being done. What is this?
Desmond Ridder was 25. Deshaun Watson was 26. Desmond Ridder was 25.
Yeah, ask Atlanta Falcon fans they feel better about if they would feel better if they had Deshaun Watson versus Desmond Ridder.
They were one of the teams that wanted him. Keep that in mind. All right. Before we go to break, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason for the first time this year, or this week.
This is Daniel, Menor Cardinal, living in Florida. My point is Watson's been criticized through his rust and all so on and so forth, missed 2 years. End of the season all incorporated, but what we're not talking much about is over those 2 years he never received all the hits and the damaging situations that quarterbacks go through, so he is really healthy comparatively to many of the other quarterbacks he's compared to, and that should be a benefit for him. We're hoping that he has a big season. I think he can do that. We hope the Browns have a good season, and the way he goes pretty much is going to dictate it. So we just ask that the fans have a little patience with him and have a little faith in him. Thank you for everything you do on your program. It's great. Go Browns. Woof, woof.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Quincy, that is an interesting point. He hasn't taken 2 years of hits. This is a guy that should be entering the prime of his career with the age that he's at.
Yeah, I think it's important that he's still at a young age, right? Whether he takes the 2 years of hits, whether he doesn't, I don't know how impactful that's ultimately going to be, because it seems like football players just kind of age, no matter what. The football that they played in the past kind of just takes a toll after a while. That it really don't matter. But Yeah, I think the age that he's at, the fact that he's in that, 28 to 29, like ready to be in the prime of his career, maybe the fact that he hasn't been hurt allowed him, or not been playing football the last couple of years, allowed him to heal some of those like periphery injuries to just kind of play around. You would have to talk to him to know if he had like any extra, surgery or treatment done to make sure that he's like 100% healthy. But yeah, I mean, like he should be able to be relatively healthy. He's young. There is no reason to believe that given a full year, he's going to be one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. Like, if you don't believe he'll be back to being one of the best quarterbacks, it's a debatable conversation that you can have. But I see no evidence that points to he's going to be one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL, which, again, referring to the list, that's what some people are saying. Just nuts to me.
I can't agree with you more. Quincy Carrier and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason and the difference between what Jim Schwartz's defense is and what Joe Woods' defense was. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is Bill from California, longtime listener. My question has to do with the quality of, I guess it's about Stefanski in general. But even though, most people view him as a pretty good coach, he seems to make bad decisions. For example, last year in the fourth quarter, the game plan was to take, was to run Hunt and take 24 out of the game, and Hunt was being stopped. He was not as good, and they didn't compensate for it. So it seems as though, I wish Stefanski would coach the whole team, and so I worry about the quality of coaching, because you can have the best players in the world, but if they're not coached well, you end up, with the Browns, what the Browns have done for the last 20 or 30 years. So thank you so much. Bye-bye.
So I appreciate all the voicemails. Quincy, I think it's kind of the he's talking about, some of the in-game adjustments and those kind of things, which I understand the concern. Coaching, I think Jim Schwartz helps that a lot. I think Bubba Ventrone helps that a lot. I think the offense has been pretty well coached. In-game adjustments, that probably needs a little bit of room for improvement.
And the coach is only as good as players execute on the field, right? Great players make great coaches out of regular men all the time. It happens. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be so worried about Kevin. The thing you would have to watch with Kevin and any coach isn't necessarily if you think they're the greatest adjuster in the world, is do you think that they're so bad at their job that they're gonna be a obstacle to your success? I 100% don't believe that when it comes to Kevin Stefanski. You look at somebody like Zach Taylor, who has not been as impressive in his career as Kevin has in his, and is not as experienced as Kevin is. He has been able to get by because, you know, Joe Burrow's there. He's able to call up some things there. So I don't think the coaching is gonna outdo what you have there on the roster. Like, I just don't think that that's a correlation you can look at.
All right. What do you think the difference will be between Jim Schwartz's defense and Joe Woods' defense? Again, I know you've addressed this in your show, but difference between what the Browns' defense will be with Joe Woods and what it has been.
Yeah, it's going to be slight changes, right? It's not necessarily going to be this big thing that you're going to see day one, because you're still going to see some 4-2-5. You're still going to see some cover 2, some cover 3. But it's about how they execute those things that are going to be a little bit more different, right? We know that Joe Woods didn't run that much man. We know that Jim Schwartz is going to run a little bit more. We know that Joe Woods was not necessarily a blitzer. We know that Jim Schwartz is more of a blitzer. And we know that when it comes to the philosophy on how to attack on defense, Jim Schwartz is somebody who believes that attack starts at the defensive line and rolls his way up the defense, where Joe Woods was a big believer in coverage sacks. So we get the coverage that allows the defensive line to get that extra time, which is going to create pressure, which is going to create sacks and all kind of production there. So it's just a different philosophy. It's a similar philosophy within the same, let me find a better way to say this. It's the same book that they're teaching out of, but different philosophies within it. I think that's a better way to say it.
All right, take a look at this. This is graphically showing separation allowed in man coverage and zone coverage. X-axis is man coverage separation grade, Y-axis zone. So the higher the Brown helmets are up, means the better they are in zone coverage. The more to the right they are means they're better in man coverage. Denzel Ward is one of the best in man coverage there is. All three cornerbacks grade out better in man coverage than zone coverage. So what that leads you to believe is they should do better with more man coverage. That's what that data shows.
And what they have are 3 different corners who have different type of specialties that you can use. And instead of like saying, hey, you're going to be on the right side of the field, you're going to be on the left side of the field, you can match them up a little bit better, right? Denzel Ward's probably the best athlete that we have on the defense. He's the guy that you could put on the other team's best athlete. So, if you're playing Tyreek Hill, he's covering Tyreek Hill. If you're playing the Bengals, you're covering Jamar Chase. And then you have somebody like Greg Newsome, who's probably like the most technically skilled corner, right? He has the best feet, best hip mirror in practice, the quickness and everything else in there. So that's somebody you would put on like a Tyler Boyd or a T. Higgins. And then you have Martin Emerson, who's there for like the big bodies, right? Like he's up, he's physical, he knows how to play physical, and he knows how to play balls, especially in the red zone. So you have those 3 guys who, yes, they're all 3 corners, but they all have different roles that they can play in, different niches that they can fill within the defense. So that allows you to kind of use them all simultaneously. So I'm excited to see how we're going to take advantage of having 3 guys that we feel strong about in that DB room, especially at the corner position specifically. And you also think about the help that they have with having Juan Thornhill, and you also add in that Grant Delpit seemed like he was going to take a step. We're adding Ronnie McLeod. I feel really good about where this defense can go, not only with the schematic changes that they're applying to this team, but also to some of the changes that they made in personnel, or upgrades that they made in personnel as well.
So what do you think, what do you expect from Myles Garrett and Jim Schwartz's defense? What's his ceiling? How high do you think he can go with what Jim Schwartz wants to do?
The question that we all want to know the answer to: can Myles Garrett get 20 sacks? Is he going to be a 20-sack guy? Now, we talk about this like it's arbitrary, but like it only has happened like three or four times in the last like 10 years. So it's very rare that somebody's able to get 20 sacks. And the question a lot of people have right now is, hey, is the help that he's going to have going to lower his sack number or allow it to grow? Because there's one argument you could say is, hey, last year he was basically all the defensive line had. So any type of sack that was going to come from the defensive line, it had to be Myles Garrett. So every sack opportunity he took advantage of, and that's how he got to 16. You can also look at it from a different perspective. Since nobody else was creating any type of havoc in the backfield, Myles Garrett wasn't really able to clean up and get some of those extra sacks that a guy like TJ Watt is able to pick up. So I tend to believe there's some kind of middle ground there. I think he's more an 18 sack guy than a 20 sack guy. And I also think, Dave, it's really, really hard to get 20 sacks when everybody knows you can get 20 sacks. Like, you look at the 20 sack season guys, they usually have like one 20 sack season and never again. Unless they're J.J. Watt. J.J. Watt is one of the most incredible peaks that we have seen in football, where he got 20 and then got 20 again and then got 17. That's a different person, right? Like, but when it comes to most guys, they get 20 sacks. It's hard to get 20 sacks again, because once you reach a certain level of respect, nobody's ever going to move a body off of you, no matter what they do on the other side or how they move you around. So he's just not going to get some of the benefits of lesser known guys that are able to kind of get more sacks because they're not going to get paid attention to sometimes. So I don't know if that's going to add up to him getting the 20 sacks. But what I do know is that his presence should help some of the other guys on the defensive line improve their sack total, since the rest of the defensive line is now NFL quality.
Yeah, I'm with you. The upgrade, I think, it will increase the sack total, increase the pressure percentage as well, which should mean good things for that defense. Quincy, Carrier and I are going to step aside, take another timeout. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Plus, who is the biggest challenger to the Cincinnati Bengals in the AFC North? Some ESPN writers weigh in. Sports4CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE with Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
You know, I've been watching a lot of the previews for the AFC North, and, you know, I keep hearing the same thing that, you know, Cincinnati's the best and, you know, Baltimore, you know, whatever they're saying is. But, you know, what I don't understand is they keep talking about how Cleveland's going to finish last, but and they're 1-4 against them since they got Burrow. I mean, we're 4-1 against them.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Quincy, that's true. The Browns seem to match up well with the Bengals. A couple of those games, Bengals had the division wrapped up. So, you know, the 4-1 is true, but a little misleading because a couple of those games didn't matter as much.
Yeah, and also the Bengals have done things in recent years, very pointed things to make sure that the issues that the Browns were able to exploit against them weren't issues that can continue to be exploited. You talk about them bringing in Lael Collins. This year they brought in Orlando Brown Jr. A lot of upgrades at that offensive line position where they were really getting exposed by the Cleveland Browns because they had no answer for Myles Garrett. You look at every single one of those Joe Burrow Bengal games, and you're going to either find an interception early in the game or you're going to find like 2 Myles Garrett strip sacks, right? It was just something that they could not figure out an answer for, and that's really what caused them the most strife, especially when it happens early in the game. So that's kind of been one of the issues that the Bengals had. To answer the caller, like the reason the Browns are being predicted to finish last because they finished last year. You know, like that's just what it is. Now, I think there's a better argument to be made that like, why are people acting like the Steelers are going to finish ahead of us when like there's no good football argument to make that take. But as far as like comparing the Browns to the Bengals, yes, we're able to beat them. But you look at the success that the Bengals have had outside of Cleveland, and it's undeniable.
Yeah, and again, a lot of it comes down to quarterback play in the NFL, without question. This is from ESPN. Who is the biggest threat to Cincinnati in the AFC North Division? This is Ben Baby, who is ESPN Bengals beat reporter. Give me the Browns. A lot of this is contingent on whether Watson regains the form he had in Houston, but new receiver Moore flashed a lot of potential with the Jets. Cleveland's rushing attack, the wide receiver group, Moore, Cooper, Peoples-Jones, and a bolstered defense puts the team in contention. The other thing about that, the Bengals have redone their secondary somewhat. So from year to year, everything in the NFL changes. But if you have Joe Burrow and you have Jamar Chase and you have T. Higgins, you like your chances against most teams.
And they're the one team that, like, you look at some of the performances that Joe Burrow had against Pittsburgh and Baltimore. He put up some historic numbers once against Baltimore, 525 yards. None of those teams have showed any type of ability to limit him at all or limit that passing attack at all. But the Cleveland Browns, you know, the one thing you can say is they have been able to not be a victim of the great Joe Burrow game. Now, that could just be happenstance. That could just be because we're just not catching them on good days. Or it might be because we're doing something that he can't really coach against. So, yeah, I would say if you're the Bengals and the Browns look like they're going to be good, that's a real threat to you because you feel pretty good about the Bengals in a tiebreaker situation if it's the Ravens that you need to beat or the Steelers because they have had success against those teams and they have been able to have great success offensively against both of those teams despite the fact that they both have good defenses. The Browns are the one where it's like, hey, if it's looking equal and the Browns are good, like legitimately good this year, then it's a problem for you because that's the team that kind of is structured in a way that answers a lot of the things that a lot of other teams can't answer. Like if I'm the Bengals, I wouldn't want the Browns in the first round of playoffs or, you know, that's very premature, but it's about matchups and how the Browns match up against them. And I think that's why if the Browns are good, the Bengals, that's not good news for the Bengals because that's the one team, if they're really good, can cause you a lot of trouble. I think they'll be fine if the Ravens are good this year. I think they'll be fine if the Steelers are good this year. But the Browns, that's the one team for them that's like, hey, they can't get good because that's a problem for us.
All right, same article. Who is the biggest impact newcomer in the AFC North? Again, from ESPN.com. Ben Baby, again, Bengals beat reporter. Browns adding Zadarius Smith to their group of pass rushers that already features Myles Garrett is his pick. While his pass rush win rate ranked 58th among edge rushers, Smith recorded 10 sacks, good for 19th in the league, and his third Pro Bowl selection. The other thing about that is he wasn't playing with Myles Garrett, and that's going to improve that 58th win rate against edge rushers because he's usually going to be the second guy.
Yeah, he's going to have an opportunity to create some pressures and to win a lot of battles. And I think Jim Schwartz is experienced enough that he'll be able to use the attention that that Myles is going to get to help get Zadarius some free looks during the season. So I would say having somebody that caliber of Zadarius Smith, adding him across from Myles Garrett is a very, very good choice there.
All right, Jake Trotter from that same article. Biggest impact newcomer, AFC North. He is the Browns beat reporter. Pair of new assistant coaches in Todd Monken and Jim Schwartz. Browns defense, Ravens offense have the talent to be among the best in the NFL if the coordinators can get them to play up to their potential. Again, that's very interesting. And if Jim Schwartz does what he has a history of doing, I would agree. The Browns defense, if Schwartz can get it to get it unlocked, that's one of the keys to the season. That and also Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I agree about Schwartz too. I also tend to, and I guess people are saying I'm being a bit of an alarmist here. I tend to want to pump the brakes a little bit with how high we can get on the defense, because I do think this is so much that they have to unlearn from the last 3 years that they're not going to be able to play at the extremely high level that they're capable of early in the season, if not, until very late, if not at all this season. But I think they'll be very good, or at least good, which would be a huge upgrade from what they were last year, which was abysmal. And as far as the Ravens go, do they really some of the best talent on the offense? Like they got Lamar. I agree. Like Lamar is really good, and I think that Mark Andrews is good. But like, are we counting Odell Beckham at 31? Like, is some of the best talent in the league? Because when he was on the Super Bowl team, he was relegated to being the third or fourth receiver. He's very talented and everything else like that. But I don't know if just having Odell makes somebody talented, or one of the most talented groups there. The running backs, their leading rusher for the last 4 years, I believe. Well, 3 years. No, 4. My bad. 4 years has been Lamar Jackson. I know that they like some of these running backs that they have on the roster, but why can't they outrush the dude who's not even taking the most carries?
Well, they're
I don't know.
Hurt. They've been hurt. And the other one, I know Todd Monken's offense was great at Georgia. I still want to see. I want to see Lamar playing in that offense.
It was great at Georgia. What wasn't great at Georgia? That's the thing. I saw Georgia roll out their second teamers in a national championship game and put up 20 more points. That's not because Todd Monken knows what he's doing. That's just because Georgia's that much better than everybody else.
Go get me the guy that's recruiting the talent for Todd Monken, and let's get him bringing in the talent for the offense. I'm with you. All right, Quincy Carrier and I going to step aside, take one more time out on the side of the break. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Take a look at the Browns receiving core and the mix that it has. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier, untitled, unfiltered Browns coverage. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, I just want to think about DTR. I think he's a big threat, man. I think he'll be a big threat in the NFL because he looks like Lamar Jackson out there. Literally, with his runs, he looks like Lamar. Thank you, and go Browns. Have a good day.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Quincy, again, they like the potential of Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Let's let them get adjusted to the NFL before we start mentioning them in the same breath with Lamar Jackson.
I refuse to take that voicemail seriously. I just refuse. No, there's no way that person was being serious. That had to be like a joke or an attempt to get on the show. And congratulations, you did it. But there's no way that's a serious take. Absolutely no way, no shot, not a single chance. Nah, dog, you didn't get me. I don't believe you actually believe that, caller. No. There's no way. No, I've never heard somebody say that. That's ridiculous. No. He didn't mean that. He didn't say that. That didn't happen.
All right. So Browns receiving core added to it quite a bit. You brought in Marquise Goodwin. You traded for Elijah Moore. You draft Cedric Tillman. So Mina Kimes, ESPN tweets this out. Like the Browns receiving core, nice mix of players that will complement the skill sets. Route running, inside and outside versatility, Cooper, speed, Moore and Goodwin, size, Tillman, a fun group. And they did a nice job. You have the ability to kind of get versatile, and it can be games game plan specific. If you got guys that have smaller cornerbacks, you can go big. If you got faster guys or guys that aren't as fast, you can go fast now with Goodwin and Moore. They've done a nice job of getting a wide variety that they can mix and match and find matchups that they can exploit.
They can finally get out of base with their wide receivers. You know what I mean? Where they just had to run their 3 best wide receivers at all times. Now they can have little special packages of wide receivers that they want to run out there for specific things to spread out. And it's not going to feel like they're hurting the team because they're taking somebody really good off. So I think that's going to be something that's helpful to the variety, helpful to just creating more space in the game and being able to open up things for even somebody like Nick Chubb or even somebody like David Bell, who we're not really talking about, right? Like the diversity of talent in those players' ability to get open in very different ways is very helpful. And again, it's kind of like the conversation I brought up when I was talking about corners, where I'm saying you got to have guys who fit certain niches if you're going to have a bunch of them on here, and you have that with this wide receiving core, right? Cedric Tillman's kind of the big body guy. You got Donovan Peoples-Jones and David Bell, who are going to be guys who really carry that intermediate to underneath part of the field, more sure-handed. You have Amari Cooper, who can get you anything you really want. You know, great route runner, going to be crisp there. And then you have Elijah Moore, who could be a big playmaker. And when you don't have Elijah Moore out there, you have Marquise Goodwin, who's one of the fastest players in football. So you have all of these different niches you can hit in your wide receiving room. And I think that's going to allow for a lot of creativity between Kevin Stefanski and Deshaun Watson on how to use these guys in certain packages to be able to manipulate opposing defenses.
All right, I know you've addressed this on your show as well. Why do you think some Browns fans are somewhat down on Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah? Was a couple of years ago as a rookie, played pretty well. Everybody was excited. Why do you think there's some concern in Browns fans' minds about JOK?
He seems to be one of those players where people made such a strong argument about why he could not work or his size being an issue, that anytime he struggles or doesn't play well, there's always going to be a group of fans that are willing to be like, see, I told you that was an issue for him, and not really look at the other circumstances. It's kind of like there's confirmation bias with him because he's undersized, that people assume that's why he got injured. That's why he wasn't able to be effective. When the truth is, you put a big linebacker in that situation, they're not going to be able to be effective because the defensive tackles just weren't doing their jobs consistently last year, on top of other things, So I think sometimes we tend to get too negative about a player because of one bad season. I think that's just the case with JOK.
Yeah, I'm anxious to see a linebacker that can run sideline to sideline and tackle, which he was a pretty good tackler coming out of Notre Dame and in his rookie year. That's a guy that should thrive in this system of Jim Schwartz.
Yeah, somebody who's able to move around. If you have good defensive tackle play, he's going to be able to have the freedom to make certain play. I think there's going to be a lot that JOK can do in this defense, and I think that's going to be really important for him.
All right. What about some guys that you think the Browns are kind of down on, that they've almost given up on?
Guys who they're down on, that they've almost – I would say you're probably there with Anthony Schwartz. Tommy Togiai is another one where, like, I forgot he was on the team, but I think Tommy Togiai is another one where it's like, I don't think it's a matter of bad technique. I just think it's a matter of he just ain't got it. So I think those two would probably be the biggest highlights that you could look at when you look at this team and you look at guys who they've let go of the plan on. I think you look at those two.
Who are some guys you think are in battles to earn a spot on the 53-man? Some of those guys that are going to have to claim the last couple of spots.
Yeah, Jordan Elliott, probably one of those guys, right? No longer in his rookie deal, or close to not being in his rookie deal. Limited upside. They've really tried a bunch of different things with him. It hasn't been successful. So they'll see what they can do with him this year. Another guy who I would say is probably in a camp battle is AJ Green, right? He had a role on this team, but then Martin Emerson showed up And now that role's kind of taken to that bigger corner. I don't think he's somebody who can transition well into like a slot DB type situation. I don't even think the Browns are going to be using a primary slot DB that often. So even if that role was there, it's still very limited. And I just don't know what the role that A.J. Green would be looking for. Where is that available for him right now?
Yeah, that's fair. As always, Quincy Carrier, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Quincy.
No problem. Thank you for having me on.
All right, Quincy Carrier, make sure you check him out. It's really good Browns coverage, untitled, unfiltered Browns coverage. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Casey Kinnamon from Dawg Daily straight ahead. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hello, this is John from Sandusky. I need to ask a question. Do you think that Donovan Peoples-Jones can be actually a Webster Slaughter to Deshaun Watson, just like Bernie Kosar?
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Casey Kinnamon from Dawg Daily. Casey, if you want to go back to that era, Donovan Peoples-Jones reminds me a little bit more of like a Reggie Langhorne. But when you talk about Donovan Peoples-Jones, it's a sixth-round pick who's going to get a second contract. I'm not sure it's going to be here, but he's an NFL receiver. He's a pretty good NFL receiver. He may play his way beyond what the Browns want to give him in terms of a contract, and that's okay. That means he had a good year, and the Browns had a successful year.
Yeah, that's exactly where I landed. He's definitely more of the Reggie Langhorne type, but that's a very valuable piece to have on a football team. Underrated, you know. You need that guy to do that. You need third down catches. You need a big boundary guy. I think there's a level of DPJ's game that needs to be unlocked still in the red zone, but it's all there for him. He's going to get plenty of volume this year, and he may very well play himself out of Cleveland. But that is a good thing. That's the thing that successful teams have to deal with, you know, is bring a guy up through the ranks. And he was a 6th-round draft pick who became a plus starter. That in itself is a victory. And if he has a season that places him outside of the range of pay that Cleveland feels comfortable giving him, then that's just the way it's going to have to play out.
And again, I know Browns fan, it's kind of very polarizing with DPJ. The Chiefs let Tyreek Hill go. So good teams have to do that. The plus side would be the Browns have developed a wide receiver. And when's the last time you could say that? I think about that for a minute.
Yeah, this is a first. That's why it feels new to fans. But they've also already got another guy in the pipelines, and Cedric Tillman, who might be the guy who just steps into that role. That's what you're seeing now. Is they're developing guys, they're bringing guys in who kind of fit similar skill sets, and then that's just the way this thing has to evolve. When you have successful players like DPJ who outplay his draft slot, you may have to replace that guy, and they've already got a guy in the pipeline to do so.
And again, they may, and I'm not saying they shouldn't sign him, they may sign him, but again, don't get locked into, boy, we got to have, Donovan Peoples-Jones. This is interesting as well. This is from an article in the Akron Beacon Journal. Nick Chubb tied a career-high 12 rushing touchdowns in the first 11 games of the year. Those were the ones Jacoby Brissett started and played quarterback, but did not score again once Watson was the starter. Chubb said earlier this month he's not concerned about the carryover into this season. You can't really look at the numbers. 12 is the most I've ever had since I've been here. I don't think it had much to do with he's referring to the quarterback. I think we have to figure some things out, get the kinks out of the offense, and I don't think I'm hindered by Deshaun Watson at all. I'm not worried at all. I can't control what I can't control. When the ball's in my hand, I have full control, so I'm not worried about anything. It's an interesting point relative to Deshaun Watson, but the thing I would say is it was also changing the offense dramatically to fit Watson. So they're going to have the run schemes and the run down when they go into the regular season. And I think Nick Chubb's going to benefit because he's not going to see 9-man boxes very often.
Yeah, especially early in games. I think that's going to kind of evolve as the season goes. But I think you should see, especially in the first half of games, Chubb be more efficient with his touches, which is already, at a historic clip at 5.2. I think that might, kind of creep up towards the 6s.
Yeah, I know you've also written an article, why you think Nick Chubb will still get his touches. Take us through that and kind of your thought process.
I was just kind of seeing a growing narrative that just because the Browns offense is evolving to go through Deshaun Watson, that Nick Chubb wouldn't see the volume that he's seen in years past. And I get it. I completely understand that, if it goes through Watson, you're probably going to see more shotgun, more pistol, more full wide receiver, more empty sets, which would all lend itself to Nick Chubb having a less of effect on the game. But when I step back and I kind of pulled it apart, I keep coming back to the same spot. I think that Chubb's going to kind of end up with that same kind of volume. It's just going to be structured differently than it has in years past. So last season, Nick Chubb's usage was dependent upon whether the Browns were within the game. If they're in the flow of the game and weren't down by more than 7, then he was going to be a focal point of the offense. Well, in 2023, if everything goes according to plan and they're able to throw themselves into these leads, what happens when there's 4 minutes left to go in the third quarter and they're up 7 or 10? Well, that's Nick Chubb time. That's what's going to happen, is you're going to see him get these, kind of be brought in to be the closer and take the air out of the ball and grind the clock out, and probably do so with, 10 to 12 carries in the second half of games. Well, when you add that to the 5 or 6 he'll naturally get in the first half, just being Nick Chubb, I think we end up in the same spot, but it's just going to be structured differently. So we're going to feel different about how we got there. And then you look at the snap percentages. Last year, he played 56% of the snaps. He had 302 carries. His backup was Kareem Hunt, who played 42% of the snaps and got 123 carries. Well, in steps Jerome Ford. And while I expect him to be a significant contributor for this team, I still don't see him, logging more than 100 carries or playing 400 snaps. I think it's going to be lesser. And you add those things together, and I still think we end up in the same spot with Nick Chubb's volume. It's just going to be different than it has in years past because it isn't going to come consistently throughout the game. There's going to be pockets where Nick Chubb is the focal point of the offense and not the driving force the entire time.
Think of it this way as well. They ran a lot of 2 and 3 tight end sets that Nick Chubb ran out of. If you're running 3 wide receiver sets, you're taking bigger bodies off the field, bringing smaller bodies on the field. If I'm a defensive back, I am not trying to tackle 24 very often. It's a losing proposition for you.
if you're a defensive back, you can't be happy seeing these clips coming out of him squatting 605 for sets of 2. Like that is a problem. And you're going to see a lot of business decisions being made on the second level when Chubb gets loose. And
it takes less of a toll on his body as well, those carries, where it isn't, the standard 3 linebacker sets, 2 big, you sub in safeties, you sub in cornerbacks, and you sub in lighter guys who can get after the quarterback. And that's what we're talking about by lighter boxes. That adds up to an easier game for Nick Chubb.
Yeah, he's just going to be more efficient than he already is, which is ridiculous to think about. But even then, in the second half of games, when everyone knows that he's going to run the ball if they have a lead, that's going to be what he's done his whole career. That's what he has 5.2, is against those 8-man boxes. So when he sees 7 and 6 at times, because if the passing game really takes off, they have to disperse their defense. And with a guy like Nick Chubb, man, that's just a risky proposition.
Casey Kinnamon and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break. Roster rankings from ESPN.com. We'll tell you where the Browns rank. Also, what they view as the strength and the weakness of the roster. Sports for CLE. Be right back. Stay with us.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily. ESPN came out with an updated NFL roster rankings. They ranked the Browns roster 9th overall. Strongest unit, they say, offensive line. Tackles, Jedrick Wills, Jack Conklin are terrific pass blockers. Center Ethan Posick was elite in both pass and run games last year. And guards Joel Bitonio, who didn't miss a snap last season, and Wyatt Teller are terrific. Weakest unit, defensive tackle depth, remains problematic with Jordan Elliott, Perrion Winfrey, Maurice Hurst, rookie Siaka Ika among those battling for work. This is a concern for a defense that ranked 31st in rushing EPA allowed in 2022. Casey, again, the offensive line, we're worried about Jedrick Wills, but again, it's viewed as either the best or the second best offensive line in football, and it better be because they're going to need that.
Yeah, it just goes to show how spoiled we are. Like, we'll pick apart Jed's game or Conklin's injury history, but look across the league. There aren't teams that are fielding 5 adequate starters, let alone what Cleveland has with their plus starters, and then Jedrick just being adequate. That's still lifetimes better than what a lot of these teams are dealing with, and that's why you see such an emphasis is a lot of these teams are fielding guys that are borderline starters, and then if their depth gets tested, it all falls apart. Well, the Browns are in a good place in that regard. It's something like I said, we're spoiled. But on the defensive side, man, we've been saying this for how long? That is, even with the addition of Dalvin Tomlinson and drafting Siaka Ika, it is still a massive concern. The only thing I would argue is the linebackers could be on this list, but we don't know. We can't even judge the linebackers because defensive tackle play has been so poor. We can't even really see what they can do yet, So hopefully we get that figured out this year.
Do you think the Browns are counting or hopeful that Jim Schwartz kind of unlocks a little bit of Jordan Elliott's potential, and only by asking him to do things that he does well?
I don't know. We're on year 3 of this. The coach is kind of being impressed with him behind the scenes. And I'm sure fans wish they could get on board too, but he just hasn't shown what you need to see. And I don't know, you see him go take some lottery tickets in Maurice Hurst and Tristan Hill. You know, they're banking on someone stepping up, which is exactly where they were last year. You've seen how that ended. Someone's going to have to push Elliott out of that position. For some reason, they seem just confident that he's going to be that guy. But we got to go on. There's a decent sample size at this point, and I don't feel too inspired by his play up to now. But there is a chance that Jim Schwartz kind of tweaks a couple things and has him do only what he's great at. I would just like someone to point that out to me, what that is. We keep seeing him get pushed to the second level, and I would argue that his best attribute is as a pass rusher. But even then, I think he was the 58th in overall pressure rate at that position. It's still a massive concern.
All right, same article, X factor for the Browns for 2023. They go with Deshaun Watson. Obvious, sure, but the range of outcomes here is absolutely massive for both Watson and the roster, which is otherwise strong outside of the huge question at quarterback. Non-starter to no, Siaka Ika. Third-round pick, played mostly 0 and 2/2i techniques at Baylor, according to Sports Info Solutions tracking, generated 30 pressures from those spots over the past 2 seasons, second most among all FBS players in that span. We've talked about this a lot. It's asking a lot to hope that a rookie defensive lineman who is not taken in the first 10 picks can make an impact in his rookie year.
Oh, absolutely. But this is what we were talking about with Schwartz. Schwartz is going to ask him to be a one-gapper. He was asked to be a two-gapper in college, and his play kind of fell off his senior year to where he wasn't making impact plays. Hopefully this switching over to being a one-gapper allows him to be an impact player, because that's what we're wanting up front. You know, it's easy to hold court, and he's a big body, and even if he just holds his zone and occupies blockers, he would be doing more than what the defensive tackle position did last year. But if he's able to make a few impact plays on a rotational basis, because he is a rookie, so expecting him to all of a sudden step up and be a guy early in his career, it's not likely. You know, I'd tell people to temper their expectations, but I think he'll be used only to accentuate his strengths in a rotational basis, and that just speaks to what Schwartz does.
And as far as Watson goes, I personally don't think there's that wide of range of outcomes. I think he's proven he is a above average NFL quarterback. He may be, top 10. Anything higher than that, you're probably being overly optimistic at this point just because of the time off.
Yeah, I've always said this: even if he plays to his floor, this is probably a still 500 team, just based on everything that's around him. But if he does find his ceiling, this team is scary, not just for the North, not just for the AFC, for the entire league. You know, it is a variance of outcomes, but I think the floor is higher than people want to think that it is.
Yeah, I would agree that, you can't do those 6 games. The Browns knew more so than we did even that it just wasn't going to give you an accurate picture. And if you think about it logically, hadn't played with those guys, hadn't played in, almost 700 days. How did you expect it to come out? All right. This is from the 33rdteam.com. 5 burning questions for the 2023 NFL season. They go with how will Watson perform? It's up to Browns coach Kevin Stefanski to get a return on owner Jimmy Haslam's investment. Unlike last year, there's no built-in excuses. Reality is, if Stefanski can't get Watson to play like a top 10 quarterback, Haslam will find someone who can. I'm not sure I agree with that 100%, but it's time to go win some games.
Yeah, I agree that Stefanski will be the scapegoat if it goes wrong, but I think this is just as much on Deshaun Watson, to get it going. Like, are we looking at his past success in Houston and saying, well, yeah, of course he was successful. He had Bill O'Brien. No, it was Deshaun Watson. I would argue he was doing some of that stuff in spite of Bill O'Brien. But there's not really winning for Kevin Stefanski if he doesn't able to get him to that top 10 level it's going to be, the coach couldn't get it done. But if Watson balls out, he's going to get all the credit, not Stefanski. People aren't going to be putting Stefanski on a pedestal. It'll be, Watson figured it out. He got back on track. That'll be the narrative if he's able to ball out this year.
But if he is able to ball out, Kevin Stefanski gets a nice long contract extension and will be Cleveland Browns head coach for this foreseeable future.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. To the victor goes the spoils.
Casey Kinnamon, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Casey.
Hey, anytime. Thanks for having me.
Casey Kinnamon, make sure you check him out. Always really good stuff with the Browns on Dog Pound Daily. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.